It would be pretty easy if we believed that it just brought people to faith, right? Because
Right.
we'd
Amen.
sprinkle or pour, so I could just walk down the street and start baptizing everybody. That would make evangelism a lot
You
easier.
take a
Oh, yeah.
super soaker
Yeah, it's
down to
even
the
easier if you
street,
can
so
if
you
you go
start
sprinkle
dousing
for
everybody.
sure.
But clearly, that's not what we do.
Right.
And the reason for that is this: that when you have to recognize that if we believed in an effectual grace in the sense of the Reformed do, or in other words, an irresistible grace, then we would say, sure, we could do that. But because grace is resistible, and we certainly have no scriptural precedent at all for dragging people to baptism unwillingly, I would argue differently for the oikos baptisms, the household baptisms. So it would be my argument that we do have precedent for doing that when it comes to a household and those in that household, but not for just forcing people to be baptized in terms of, a rank
Right.
unbeliever who hates the Christian faith. But it wouldn't really do them any good because we can resist God's grace. And if we can resist and people do resist, then it doesn't mean that, say, if you were to do one of those bizarre things, right, grab the pagan and force him to be baptized, would the baptism be valid? Well, I mean, sure, in the sense that the water's there, the word is there, it's the objective promise of God. So is the baptism itself valid? Sure, probably not in right order or proper, but does that mean that the baptism would have the effect that you desire? Probably not. And that would be due to human resistance.
So,
If that makes sense.
yeah, it does. And I would be curious. So when we're talking about, like when would you baptize a person? Like they would need some kind of profession of faith. Is that right?
If they are not an infant, of course.
Of course, yes,
Yeah,
because they can't
okay.
profess.
So yeah, I mean, we have, and this is really what all Paedo-Baptist churches do, is we do practice believers' baptism for those who have not received baptism yet, and generally believers' baptism in that circumstance requires a profession of faith. So we would do that in terms of the person who is able to profess faith. But if it comes to an infant or even somebody who is just
So
mentally,
grace is irresistible as long as you're still in pull-ups. I'm just kidding.
well, there's a question that people often ask about that, because it is the assumption that, yes, if your infant is baptized, then your infant is saved. And I do think that seems to be the scriptural assumption when we look at the example of things like household baptisms. And I'll point to some of the same passages that a Presbyterian would in that question.
Right.
But so Lutheran theologians have wondered about that. Why is it that we have considered infants as saved, but also recognize that other people can resist the grace of God in baptism? So the response has usually been that infants do have what is just the natural human resistance, right? Because we're born in sin. So there is a natural resistance. But what infants don't offer is that kind of exceptional, willing resistance to the grace of God that at whatever point we seem to develop as we grow older. And so we generally accept that infants are regenerate Christians from the moment of baptism. Now, is it possible that an infant could resist in their will to the point of rejecting the regeneration offered in baptism? Well, maybe, but there's no way we would even know that, right? So,
But you guys also hold to apostasy, so it doesn't make it.
Right,
It doesn't make
exactly.
it impossible. It's not that difficult.
guaranteed.
You could say, hey, the
Yeah.
child was saved, and then
Right.
when it got 8 months old, the child was 8 months old. It was
Yeah.
like, I'm apostatized.
Yeah.